Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier podcast for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
And I'm Joe Healy.
All right, Joe, this is the day many fans have been looking forward to, a momentous day in the history of Sun Devil athletics. Earlier on Monday, Ray Anderson tendered his resignation in that role, effective immediately. He will be staying on in terms of a professor role, but in terms of the big picture, the future of the athletic department, he's out.
As excited and fired up as the Sun Devil fan base was after that gritty win just a couple nights ago at UCLA, I don't think anybody saw this coming. And as you've seen by the social media reactions, pretty much a unanimous level of excitement. It's a day that a lot of Sun Devil fans were wondering when it would come, some maybe if it would come. We didn't know if it'd be tied to NCAA violation information and notice of allegations, that sort of thing. But whatever the case may be, here on this Monday, a very early news drop for the week of Ray Anderson being out as athletic director at ASU.
So, of course, we had to bring in the heavy artillery, appearance number, I believe, 94, in this emergency episode. Hod Rabino, publisher, devilsdigest.com. Hod, welcome back. Let's dive right in. I know very busy day for you. When you first heard the news, in terms of, especially in regards to the timing, first thoughts in your head?
Yeah, I can't say I was really shocked, Brad, by the news itself, because I know it's been brewing for a while. And a few weeks back, there was I guess you would call it somewhat a premature report that Anderson already has resigned. But in any event, it was definitely something that was brewing for quite a while. In terms of the timing, doing it, like Joe said, 2 days after a very emotional victory over UCLA. Maybe I guess kind of weird. We usually expect the Friday news dump for such news. So I don't know if the timing was really a complete shocker, because again, when you talk about a situation that has been festering for quite a while, I don't know if anybody can really judge a timing of being good, bad, or indifferent in this case.
It kind of struck me as interesting timing as well, but it's kind of like a matter of when, not if, this move was going to be made in terms of what it all could mean. We'll break down perhaps, some potential signs for the future. But Joe, what are your thoughts? When obviously this is a move that we've talked about on the show for months, if not years, coming down the pike, when it finally happens at this juncture of the season, kind of near the end of the first season of under Kenny Dillingham.
With things, kind of dragging on, and it seemed like was kicking the can down the road on more than one occasion. And as Hod mentioned, there have been a few days where there were reports that would kind of come out of left field, and the thought was that the decision would have been made at that point. I always just kind of thought it wouldn't come through until something significant happened, whether that was the notice of allegations, whether it was some really substantial development with the NCAA investigation. That, I don't know, it just seemed that after all this time, it wouldn't happen on a random Monday morning. But here we are. So it was quite a shocker. And it was one of those things where you're waiting for the right people to release the information so that you don't get, too ahead of yourself thinking something has transpired. But, obviously ASU put that information out at a very early point this morning. So, yeah, it was left you a little speechless. And obviously the fans are quite excited about it. It's a new day, a new opportunity for things to turn around, and things shift now to who will be next and what the sort of qualities about that person should the powers that be target.
Yeah, it was a joyous day apparently for most Sun Devil fans out there. At the Rose Bowl Saturday night, after ASU pulls off that big win over UCLA, we're standing outside the player tunnel, waiting for the pregame press conference to go on. The players are coming out; they're celebrating with fans. D Ford's out there jumping into the crowd, taking pictures and everything, and crowds chanting ASU. And then all of a sudden, the crowd notices that Ray Anderson's there, and the chants, I tweeted a video of that, immediately turns to Ray, you suck. Ray, you suck. So you obviously, with the website, the mobile billboards at games, it was just the movement. This is obviously a very beleaguered figure within Sun Devil athletics. Now, this comes just a couple months shy of him making 10 years on the job, named athletic director in January 2014. Now, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about some of the big wins in terms of the academic successes he has, the Olympic sports having their tremendous successes, the facility upgrades, Mullet Arenas there, hockey, men's tennis are now varsity programs, 26 varsity sports in all. But obviously, the last couple of years have been incredibly rocky in terms of the highest profile. Ho, to start with you, just how do you think that Ray Anderson, every year I sat down with Ray, asked him if the program's in better shape. He always says, yes, it is. But obviously, given what we've seen in the last couple of years with the Herm Edwards situation, both the hiring and the fallout and the payout, what are your thoughts of just in terms of just how this Ray Anderson tenure went over these last, almost 10 years?
Look, it's crystal clear that Ray Anderson really hitched his whole legacy in Tempe to the hire of Herm Edwards. And it was a hire that, unfortunately for the Sun Devil fan base, did fail miserably. There weren't any accomplishments on the field, really to speak of. No division championships when they still had divisions in the Pac-12, let alone a Pac-12 championship. The bowl games, quality of postseason play wasn't really anything to write home about. But when you have the cherry on top of the Herm Edwards era, not only failing on the field, as I said, in terms of a win-loss record, not even coming close to the standard that Ray Anderson really established for the program when he did decide to fire Todd Graham. But now that you have the cherry on top, which is an ongoing NCAA investigation, which, as we speak right now, on Monday, has not concluded yet, then you can see that the ire of the fans is definitely justified, and really to leave Arizona State while the program is still going to be saddled by recruiting sanctions due to the person that you hired and all the coaches that he hired underneath him. I think it's something that the fan base cannot and will not excuse Ray Anderson. So when he does hear those chants of Ray, you suck, and when you have boosters that are absolutely adamant about not donating one red cent to the program, to the NIL treasure chest, as long as Ray Anderson is employed, this really made it a situation where University President Dr. Michael Crow could not justify retaining Ray Anderson on the job. And I'm sure they had some long and hard conversations in recent months, maybe after the whole hoopla of moving to the Big 12 did kind of simmer down. Michael Crow and Ray Anderson had discussions about Ray Anderson's future. And I think that they both came to the conclusion that this is what definitely was a time, for change. And the fan base, and especially the boosters, they do drive a lot of what happens in the athletic department. I came on your podcast when Kenny Dillingham was hired, and I said that, make no mistake about it, it's the boosters that hired Kenny Dillingham. It wasn't Michael Crow and Ray Anderson really leading the movement here, so to speak. So just like the boosters, I think, forced the issue of Ray Anderson leaving Arizona State, would not be surprised if they're also the ones that would dictate who's going to be hired to replace Ray Anderson.
So yeah, we'll dive into what's next in a moment, but want to get your thoughts, Joe. Obviously, the failures in the football program, the NCAA investigation, let alone the drama behind the scenes with Bobby Hurley as well. But I think one of the most critical factors is kind of the failings on the NIL front. And when I sat down with Ray a couple of years ago and asked him about ASU, kind of even back then having issues on NIL, he made the mention that the big selling point for the football program would be development for the NFL, which I caught a lot of fans' ire as well. And now you see Kenny Dillingham every chance he gets, almost kind of preaching to the choir about the importance of NIL. Where do you think Ray's most critical failures were during his tenure?
I mean, that is near or at the very top of the list, especially in this landscape, this day and age in college athletics. If you go out publicly and say you're not going to join the arms race of the NIL space, that's you waving a white flag and basically giving up. And that's something that, of course, have aggravated a lot of followers, a lot of ones that would be the ones to participate in NIL of Arizona State. And, obviously there were other subtle things, or maybe not too subtle things, of way things were said, even casual statements that were made, or statements that were made to you, Brad, about how when Herm Edwards moved on, when he was let go, wondering if the football program's in a better position then than it was when he was hired. And you just cannot say yes. Like, I understand that it needs to be a politically correct answer and being aware of everything that's going on. But if you're a leader, then there's a responsibility to honesty there, and there's a way to word it in a way that doesn't maybe make you look like a failure, but also tells the truth. So things like that add up. But when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, when you have a major off-field issue that is multiple years in the making, as far as the investigation behind it, and a lack of high-level success in your major programs, I mean, that alone is the resume booster, I guess you could say, to lead to this outcome. So certainly is not something that was done hastily. If anything, it was drawn out longer than many folks would have expected. But now there's a sense of enthusiasm around the fan base, and I'm curious to see what sort of action will be in place. Are people going to jump into things right now? Are we going to see a major shift in fan donations and ticket renewals and ticket purchases? Are the next 2 games going to be sold out here? And they should be, very good opponents. How is that all going to look? Or is it going to be a situation where there's, well, let's wait to the next thing. Let's wait to see who the next hire is and if that person meets the needs. So it's going to be something to monitor, not trying to be a buzzkill for the folks who are enjoying this day. But yeah, many years adding up. I mean, at first it sounded and seemed like a hire that could really work. You know, someone that came with that NFL background and the leadership that he had when he joined Arizona State, and things were going all right for a little bit but you know, as the clock wore on, you just can't have a major off-field issue like ASU has had and have that same athletic leadership in place. There just need to be changes.
I think that's the big thing right now, because, you know, Joe, I know you and I and Hod have heard from, you know, folks saying that they're not going to, you know, donate, or they're going to withhold support in various ways until a change in athletic director was made. That change has been made. Jim Runn's now going to be taken over on an interim basis. So the big question right now, Hod, do you think that this is a moment where the floodgates open? Because at Monday's press conference with Kenny Dillingham, he said, anytime there's change, it rattles the cages to get involved in terms of, you know, donations. And he said, I believe he used rapid 5 times in terms of stressing the importance and the need of ramping ASU's NIL effort up over the next month before the transfer portal opens up the week after the season ends. I mean, do you feel that this is a point where the floodgates will open and those donors and that money, you know, those people start putting their money where their mouth is?
Yeah, I mean, you know, not to belabor the point, but Kenny Dillingham is really the booster's choice here. So if there are some boosters that, on the one hand, really wanted Kenny Dillingham on board, did get their wish, are happy, but on the other hand, was still withholding NIL funds, whether it's completely or just reducing it to a significant measure, because Ray Anderson was still in power. Now that Ray Anderson is no longer the athletic director, and again, we know this is effective immediately, that's not any kind of future date where he's going to relinquish his duties, then yes, I think that some boosters are going to put their money where their mouth is, and really are going to start contributing at a higher level, maybe just contribute, period, if they really stop their contributions in the last several months or even year. So yes, I think it's definitely going to help the NIL coffers. You know, to one extent, I think it's really anybody's guess. I know Kenny Dillingham does want the NIL fund level to be much higher than it is right now, and he's absolutely right that once the transfer portal opens, and you want to attract quality newcomers to come to your program, but you also want to retain players from not leaving your program, and that also is done, through NIL. Then it's really important to have that war chest, so to speak, nice and plump, so you can really execute your recruiting goals. Again, both retaining players and acquiring new ones from the transfer portal. So I think on paper, yes, we are going to see an increase in the NIL funds. I mean, to what extent, it's just anybody's guess. I mean, some people are going to be more optimistic than others, but I would say just on the surface, if you just going by the public sentiment out there, it does look like that the NIL situation for Arizona State is going to improve quite a bit. And again, to what level, I guess we'll have to see of the quality of players that have come into the program, let alone the quality of players that actually stayed in Tempe and did not leave the program. And that's where they can really judge whether the NIL did get the expected boost it was expected to get due to the news of Ray Anderson resigning today.
One issue that a lot of fans I've seen raise, I've read this question, I'm sure you guys have as well, is the timing here linked at all to the NCAA investigation? Is this a potential foreshadowing of imminent updates or developments in terms of the the NCAA's findings in the investigation?
I talked to somebody with intimate knowledge of the investigation, and he told me that he did not see at all the two being correlated. We know that the NCAA, when it comes to investigations, really drag their feet. They really just work on their own timetable, make sure they get all the weekends and federal holidays off when they are conducting an investigation. So I don't know if this is really going to be done, before the holiday season or maybe between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Really hard to say. But I just feel the point that you brought up, Brad, in terms of the NIL efforts needing to increase in short order, that can't happen with Ray Anderson still in power. So for Ray Anderson to resign and now give Arizona State that, I would say, just about 4-week buffer to really make sure that the NIL funds are at a level where you can attract quality players from the transfer portal. We can retain the players that you want to retain from leaving to the transfer portal and seeking those greener pastures, pun intended. I think the timing might have been more rooted in the NIL/transfer portal element rather than the NCAA investigation one.
All right, so as we close this emergency episode out, obviously, looking toward the future, a lot of folks wondering who's going to be next, and obviously, this next person needs to kind of be a forward thinker, someone who embraces the current landscape of collegiate athletics and embraces NIL and is able to really ramp up ASU's efforts in that area. Someone who can work with businesses and donors to activate the valley, for lack of a better term. Obviously names like Gene Boyd, who's been in the program for a number of years, Rocky Harris, who has ties to the program, is another name I've seen bandied about. Who are some guys, or even just maybe some characteristics that you two think are most critical for this position moving forward and to get ASU to finally kind of tap into that potential?
Well, I think that basically the elements that we mentioned that were so low and struggling in this most recently ended tenure need to be the highlights of the new person. It is what it is. NIL has to be like 1 through 10 on the list, at least having an appreciation and a strategy for that, and not having that opposite position that we just saw. Also to that, it would not be a bad thing to have somebody that is personable, that can go into a room, whether it's $1 million booster or someone who's scratching by just to buy a ticket to a game, and be able to treat those folks in the same fashion and have a high respect level and a genuine engagement with the fan base, so that there's that passion involved, so that connection can be there. Because I think a lot of Sun Devil fans are looking for that, and if that were the case, it would endear that new hire to the fan base so well. When you have these different hires, like we've seen in football, when you go from Dennis Erickson to a Todd Graham, and there's that dramatic shift, but it's the shift that program needed at the time. So when you have that dramatic shift in personality and acumen, I think that would be a major, major thing. And like you said, some of those names that you threw out there, Brad, I think a lot of those folks could do that. We'll see how this search transpires and what it looks like. But I think you just kind of have to have that forward-thinking understanding of this age of college athletics, which, what we're in right now, what we've been in for the last year or two, it's obviously a very small window, is very different than things were 5, 10, certainly beyond that years ago. So to have that innovative mindset, I mean, that's what the university does, right? Innovate. That's going to be huge.
Yeah, I think the name Rocky Harris is the most popular name out there. And I was, talking to the same individual that I mentioned earlier about also the Rocky Harris angle here. And he said that there are some aspects in place where it probably doesn't make him a viable candidate. He's a very, very qualified candidate, don't get me wrong, but he's really entrenched right now with USA Olympics. And my understanding is that he is in line to get, if not the top job for USA Olympics, one of the top jobs there. And obviously the Paris Olympics are just about 7-8 months away. So I think that for him to give up that incredible opportunity to come be athletic director at Arizona State, that's something that Rocky Harris at a minimum would think really long and hard. But just because he built himself a career with the USA Olympics, just to give it up as when he's at the cusp of getting one of the most coveted positions in that organization may not be a wise career move on his part. So that's why I feel that Rocky Harris is a name which, again, I know ASU fans are clamoring for, but I just have my doubts of how realistic it is. The name that I would bring up, and I don't know if you brought it up, Brad, is David Benedict, the athletic director at the University of Connecticut. He's someone who grew up in the Valley. He's not an ASU alumnus, but somebody who grew up in the Valley. His wife is actually a former ASU gymnast who was also an All-American back in the late 80s. And he did serve as an athletic department administrator with Arizona State some 10 or so years ago, maybe even earlier than that. So he's somebody that obviously has success with one of the major sports. As we know, UConn is the reigning NCAA champion in basketball. You also have the peculiar angle over here that he did hire Dan Hurley, the younger brother of Bobby Hurley, current Arizona State's basketball head coach. So there definitely are some factors over there that I think are working in David Benedict's favor. And to get a proven athletic director in the age of NIL, to Joey's point, that's something that really has to be squarely on the mind of Michael Crow, because that is the one factor that is really driving everything right now in college athletics. And instead of doing another hire out of the box, which Michael Crow does have that track record when it comes to athletic director hires, going back to Lisa Love, through Steve Patterson, and then through Ray Anderson, I think it's time to go a more conventional way. Doesn't mean that you have to hire an athletic director that's not going to be dynamic or not going to be competent, because again, I think David Benedict and the resume that he built himself in UConn really does speak for itself. But I think that's one person that I definitely think ASU should call early and often as they're seeking a job. As far as a guy like Oliver Luck, I know that's another quote unquote sexy name out there. He just was named the commissioner, I think, of an FCS conference or something like that. But I think that you can definitely lure him, with a nice fat paycheck and going to one of the best and biggest conferences in the country. Maybe that's enough to lure him away from a job that he just assumed a few months ago. So, I think those are the names that just really come first to mind when you're talking about a possibility of the possibilities, out there for Arizona State to hire. But make no mistake about it, this hire really needs to make a splash. And even if it's not a splash that would be by virtue of hiring somebody that has the name David Benedict, for example, just somebody that still has the proven record of being very, very, very well versed in the NIL world and really having the track record that would support such a hire. So, like everybody else, I'm really curious to see what route Arizona State goes. And not to belabor the point, the boosters did drive the hire of Kenny Dillingham. I think they're definitely going to have a very active and significant part in hiring the next athletic director in Tempe.
So one real quick point out as we close out here, what kind of timing do you think this hire might take? Is it something that they want to get done in the books before the early signing or the early signing day, and obviously the transfer portal windows open, or are they going to be a little bit more deliberate in their approach?
Yeah, I really think ideally they would like to do it before the end of the regular season in football. But when you have a sitting athletic director like David Benedict, I don't know really how realistic that can be, because any athletic director, no matter if he thinks that ASU is his dream job or just a job that sounds very, very attractive on many levels, to leave at the very tail end of a football season before it actually came to the conclusion, at least the regular season conclusion, I don't know really how well that would sit with the fan base or even with the person himself. But there's no doubt that ASU really needs to get this hired, I think, by the end of the calendar year. In terms of the NIL efforts, I don't know really if just having an interim athletic director as the transfer portal window opens really shouldn't affect, because I don't think that boosters are really going to withhold their money, especially when a guy like Kenny Dillingham is absolutely stressing the timeliness and how soon they need those NIL funds. So I don't think that ASU feels that they're under the gun to hire an athletic director by the time the transfer portal window does open. Sure, they would like to have that, but it's definitely going to be a process. Anytime you talk about hiring a coach in one of the three major sports or an athletic director, it's a process that takes longer rather than shorter. So, to have it done by Thanksgiving week, I think that might be somewhat unfeasible. But have somebody hired, sometime in December, before Christmas, before New Year's, I think that's something that may be a little more viable.
All right, so obviously a lot that's went down today and a lot that's going to be going on. Encourage you folks to get over in the huddle on devilsdigest.com. Is Hod, of course, will have his fingers on the pulse and give you guys all the heads up of what's going down a long time before it happens. Joe and I, of course, will have much more of this on our full episode, dropping, of course, on our regular Tuesday night schedule, as we also look at back at the win over UCLA and looking ahead to a reunion of sorts when the Ducks come to town